Close your eyes. I want you to imagine the cold, not the annoyance of a drafty room, but a bone-deep, paralytic cold. It is the winter of 1194. You are standing on the muddy banks of a river in rural England. The sky is the color of a bruised plum. You are 19 years old. Your name is Edgith. Until this morning, you were a housewife. You baked bread. You mended tunics. You existed in the quiet, unremarkable rhythm of village life. But now you are a spectacle. You have been stripped of your clothes. You stand in a thin linen shift that is already soaked through with the freezing rain. Your hands are bound, not behind your back, but in the twisted, agonizing posture of the ordeal. Your right thumb is tied to your left toe, your left thumb to your right toe. You are trussed like a hog ready for the spit. The priest is there. He isn't looking at you with the compassion of a shepherd. He is looking at the water. He is chanting the adultery, blessing the element. In the medieval mind, water is pure. It is used for baptism. It cleanses. And because of its purity, the belief is that it will physically reject a liar. If you float, the water is spitting you out. You are guilty. You will be dragged to the pyre or the gallows. If you sink, the water accepts you. You are innocent. The logic is a nightmare. To prove your innocence, you must drown. You feel the rough hands of the bailiff on your shoulders. You smell the reek of unwashed wool and old garlic on his breath. And then, the shove. The shock of the freezing water punches the air from your lungs. The darkness swallows you. You fight the instinct to thrash, but your limbs are bound. You sink into the silt. The silence of the riverbed is deafening. Edgith, history tells us, sank. They hauled her up by the ropes, gasping, blue-skinned, half-dead. She was vindicated. God had spoken. She was innocent of adultery. But the trauma of the water, the exposure, the pneumonia that followed, she died 3 days later. The law said she was innocent. The punishment killed her anyway. Welcome back to the Gruesome Historians. I'm your guide to the things the history books leave in the footnotes. Tonight, we are walking a very dark path. We aren't talking about battles or plagues. We are talking about the systematic, ritualized destruction of women who broke the most sacred contract of the Middle Ages, the marriage bed. We are going to look at the nose-cutting, the shaming processions, and the silent tombs built for living women. But we are also going to ask why. Why was the punishment for a woman so visceral, so public, compared to the slap on the wrist for a man? If you're ready to stare into the abyss with me, make sure you've subscribed. We are building a community of the curious here, and I don't want you wandering off alone in the dark. To understand the torture, you have to understand the property law. It sounds boring, I know, but in the 12th century, law was life and death. When a woman married, she became femme couverte, a covered woman. Her legal existence vanished. She was absorbed into the body of her husband. She owned nothing. She was nothing legally, but a vessel for his heirs. Adultery, therefore, wasn't just a sin of passion. It was a form of counterfeiting. If a wife slept with another man, she might introduce a bastard into the bloodline. She might trick a man into leaving his land, his gold, and his title to a child that wasn't his. In the eyes of the nobility, this was treason. It was a biological coup d'etat. And treason has always been punished with blood. Let's move south, to the sun-baked kingdom of Sicily, and then up to the frozen fjords of Denmark. The geography changes, but the cruelty remains the same. The year is 1231. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II issues the constitutions of Melfi. He is a man of science and art, often called the wonder of the world, but his laws regarding women are medieval in the worst sense. For the adulteress, the penalty was the removal of the nose. I want you to really think about that, not as a sentence on a page, but as a physical reality. There is no anesthesia, just a wooden chair, leather straps, and a barber surgeon with a blade. Why the nose? Why not a hand? Why not a brand on the arm? Because the nose is the anchor of the face. It is the center of human beauty. The medievals believed that a woman's beauty was her snare, the weapon she used to tempt men into sin. Justice, therefore, demanded that the weapon be destroyed. By cutting off her nose, they didn't just hurt her, they transformed her. They turned a human woman into a living skull, a monster. There is a record of a woman named Gertrude in a German township. After her punishment, she wasn't executed. She was released. But where could she go? She couldn't hide the wound. She couldn't wear a veil forever. The scar tissue would heal into a gaping, terrifying hole. She became a pariah. No one would hire her. No one would speak to her. To look at her was to see sin itself made flesh. She starved to death, begging at the crossroads, avoided by the very neighbors who had cheered for her punishment. The knife didn't kill her. The solitude did. If you're still with me, if you can picture the cruelty of a world where beauty was a crime, give this video a like. It helps us shine a light on these forgotten stories. But sometimes, blood wasn't enough. Sometimes, the community wanted to have fun. In France, they called it the charivari. In England, the Skimmington Ride. Imagine you are in a bustling market town in 14th century France. The narrow streets are packed. The smell of roasting meat and open sewage hangs in the air. Suddenly, you hear a cacophony, not music, noise. The adulteress is being paraded. But they haven't just walked her through the streets. They have created a theater of humiliation. Sometimes she is forced to ride backward on a donkey, a symbol of the world turned upside down. She is forced to hold the donkey's tail instead of reins. This is the community telling her, you are less than human. You are a beast. The neighbors, people she bought milk from, people she prayed with, are banging pots and pans. They are throwing filth, rotten vegetables, mud, and horse manure. This punishment wasn't about the law. It was about social death. In some parts of France, the punishment was even more bizarre. The woman and her lover would be tied together naked and forced to run a gauntlet through the town while the villagers whipped them. It was a way for the village to purge the sin. By mocking her, they reassured themselves of their own virtue. But imagine the psychological toll. The next day, the parade is over. You are still living in that house. You still have to walk those streets. But now, every set of eyes you meet contains the memory of your nakedness and your shame. You are a ghost, haunting your own life. But surely, you might say, this was just for the peasants. Surely the queens and princesses were safe in their silk sheets. Let me take you to Paris. The year is 1314. Let's look at the Tour de Nesle. It is the scandal of the century. 3 French princesses, Margaret, Blanche, and Joan, are accused of taking lovers. These women were the wives of the king's sons. They were the future of the French monarchy. The rumor was that they were meeting two knights, the Donnet brothers, in an old guard tower on the banks of the Seine. Nights of wine, laughter, and forbidden touch. When the king found out, the retribution was absolute. Let's look at the double standard here. The men, the lovers, their punishment was physical and immediate. They were castrated, flayed alive, and broken on the wheel. It was brutal, but it was over in hours. For the women, the punishment was time. Margaret of Burgundy was the Queen of France in name, but her throne was a damp cell in the Château Gaillard. She wasn't executed, she was immured. This brings us to one of the most terrifying concepts in history: immurement, the act of walling someone in. Margaret was placed in a cell at the top of the tower. It was open to the elements. The wind howled through the bars. The rain soaked her straw mattress. In winter, the stone turned to ice. She was given just enough food to keep her alive, but not enough to keep her warm. She was 24 years old. She had been the most powerful woman in the kingdom. Now she was rotting. History says she was found dead within the year. Maybe it was pneumonia, maybe it was tuberculosis, or maybe, as some whispers suggest, she was strangled with her own bedsheets to clear the way for her husband to remarry. Her cousin Blanche fared even worse. She was kept in a hole underground for 7 years. When she was finally released to a convent, she was a broken shell. She had forgotten how to speak properly. She couldn't bear the light of the sun. She died shortly after. They didn't cut off their noses. They simply erased them. Why was the reaction so extreme? To understand the violence, we have to look at the pulpit. The medieval church presented men with two images of womanhood. On one hand, you had the Virgin Mary, pure, silent, obedient, a mother who never had sex. On the other hand, you had Eve, the temptress, the one who listened to the snake, the one who brought sin and death into the world. Every woman was seen as a daughter of Eve. The priests taught that women were, by nature, more lustful, more unstable, and more deceitful than men. Their bodies were dangerous. Their hair was a net to catch souls. Their voices were sirens. So, when a woman committed adultery, she wasn't just making a mistake. She was revealing her true nature. She was reverting to Eve. This is why the punishments often targeted her femininity. Shaving her head stripped her of her seductive power. Cutting her nose destroyed her vanity. Walling her up neutralized her body. It was a war against the female form itself. There is a story, a legend perhaps, but born from this very real fear, from the freezing north of Finland. It takes place at Olavinlinna Castle. The story tells of a young girl, the daughter of the castle lord. During a siege, she fell in love with a soldier from the enemy Russian army. She didn't want to betray her people. She just wanted to signal him. She lit a torch on the ramparts. She was caught. Her father, the lord, didn't sentence her to the axe. He declared that she would be part of the castle forever. The masons were called. They removed stones from the thick courtyard wall. They created a small niche, just big enough for a person to stand. Can you imagine the moment the mortar was mixed? They placed her inside. She was alive, breathing, crying. And then, brick by brick, they sealed the opening. The light narrowed, a sliver of grey sky. Then, darkness. The legend says a rowan tree grew from that spot in the wall. Its berries were blood red. Whether the Maiden of Olavinlinna is fact or folklore, the horror is real. It represents the ultimate goal of these punishments: to silence the woman so completely that she becomes part of the stone, inert, harmless, dead. Before we end, I want to mention one more device. It appears later towards the end of the medieval period and into the Renaissance, but it fits our theme perfectly: the branks, or the Scold's bridle. It was an iron cage that fit over a woman's head, but the true horror was inside. It had a metal plate, sometimes covered in spikes, that slid into the mouth and pressed down on the tongue. If she tried to speak, the spikes would tear her tongue to ribbons. While this is often used for nagging women or gossips, it was also used for women accused of sexual immorality. It is the perfect symbol for everything we've talked about tonight. A woman's voice, her desire, her agency, locked inside an iron cage, enforced by pain. As we sit here in the safety of the 21st century, it's easy to judge the past. We don't cut off noses anymore. We don't bury women in castle walls. But I want you to listen to the echo. Think about how we treat scandals today. The scarlet letter has changed form. It's digital now. When a scandal breaks, who bears the brunt of the shame? Who is dragged through the mud of public opinion? Who is forced to disappear? The impulse to shame, to brand, to cast out. It is a very human, very dark instinct. It hasn't gone away. It has just changed its tools. The ghost of Edgith, shivering on the riverbank. The ghost of Gertrude, hiding her face. The ghost of Margaret, staring at the patch of sky from her tower. They are still with us. They are the silent scream in our history. If this story lingered with you, if you felt the chill of the castle walls, please share this video. These stories only survive if we tell them. Leave a comment below. What is the most terrifying punishment you've ever heard of? I read every single one. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Gruesome Historians. We have many more tombs to open, and I'd hate for you to miss what's buried inside. Until next time.